How do you deal with the inner tension that comes from being strong for your team when you don't feel like it? How do you neutralize yourself when you feel negative emotions coming on so you don't project that onto your team? Hi, I'm Becky Burley, co-founder of What Drives Winning with Brett Ledbetter. On this episode of What Drives Winning Conversations, we explore those questions and more with Mike Brey, legendary college and now professional basketball coach. Brett started by showing Mike a clip from an interview they did 10 years ago when he was the head coach at Notre Dame. Let's jump in.
When I walk out of that locker room after I've gone through 10 minutes of stuff, I got three guys going, you know what? He's right. Not rolling their eyes. If they're rolling their eyes, it's going to be a long year.
You taught me the first 30 seconds after a coach leaves is the most important 30 seconds that you'll have. Can you talk about that?
Well, first of all, I'd kill for that hairline again. That was a while ago. I'd kill for that hair. But, that was a theme that I ask coaches, who's selling your stuff when you're not around? Who's selling your stuff? Meaning players. And I always felt, and I evolved to a point where, and at Notre Dame, we were fortunate to have guys that stayed 4 years, and you had senior captains. And I always felt it was very important, those relationships with those leaders, to empower them to feel they had amazing input and ownership of the program. So, they had my back when, I wasn't around. And so I think it's a really powerful dynamic when you can get that happening, a group taking ownership of itself. And Becky knows this because she's had great teams. And when you really have that clicking, you get to a little bit of autopilot, and then you just don't want to screw it up or overcoach. And, I know I empowered some of my senior leaders when we felt we were in a good spot I'd call them at noon. I'd be ready to write the practice plan up. They were getting out of class or at lunch and go, hey, what do you guys think we should do today? And you know what? Many times, 80% of the practice plan was their ideas. And so, to kind of create that, I felt was really powerful. And what's really great about it too, then long lasting relationships, like those young men now, I had 80 of them over 23 years that came through. They are really like great friends. And I think of them as sons, out there in the world. And they feel very comfortable to call, to celebrate, to call in crisis. There's not a week goes by, because that's the relationship you developed and you really cherish. So now I've been, every summer I go to 2 weddings a summer. They're all getting married. And then what's crazy about the position we have, and Becky knows this, I'll be with them and they'll say, Coach, you remember when you said this to me at the Carrier Dome at Syracuse? And I was like, damn, I don't remember that. But it just shows how our students hang on every word and everything we do. So to be,
well, I want to ask you about that, Mike, because you came from Mike Krzyzewski and then Morgan Wooten, who had an authority that people could feel. And so for you to come in and your last coach you worked for was Coach K before you became a head coach. So you saw how he did it. You saw he had success. And then you gave ownership. You relinquished control. What do you think made you do that? Because you did kind of the opposite of where you came from.
Yeah, I think it goes back to my upbringing. Both my parents were educators, high school teachers and coaches. The dinner table talk was how they were interacting with their students. And then Morgan Wooten, I was so blessed to play for at DeMatha High School and then coach with him. He was the ultimate educator. He was a basketball coach, don't get me wrong, but as far as being able to connect with young people, and then a phrase that, we kind of evolved to at Notre Dame my last 10 years was to just be a confidence giver. And I think, that's an area where, I think is just so important. Even I have found with guys making millions of dollars with the Atlanta Hawks, grabbing them and giving them something to get them confident, keep their head up. It's no different. But I think I started as a high school teacher and coach, and I don't think I ever left that base where I was coaching at Delaware, whether I was coaching at Notre Dame. I always came back to interacting, maybe like I did with my U.S. history classes, because at a Catholic high school, they make you teach like 7.
Well, that's what I want to show you, man.
And they don't pay you. And they don't pay you.
They don't. Well, I want to show you this because this will get you back to your roots. And I just want you to comment on what you say here.
As a young coach, I think I asked the question and answered it many times, or I just answered it. This is how we do it. I didn't give credit to how intelligent the young people I had working with me. And so to ask questions, listen, and then ask another question, not make a deduction to someone's answer. And what you're getting is you're getting a lot of great feedback, and they are communicating and they are invested.
Yeah, it took me a while to learn that. And I think that is just so important. I think we all know people that, will ask you a question and then interrupt you and answer it before you get a chance in a conversation. And many leaders, I've found that. And so as I got to be more experienced, I became, as I was mentioning before we went on the air, my role with the Hawks is to be a great listener. And probably as the leader, that may be one of the top 4 or 5 things, is to listen and to, especially with my players. And I remember the comment I said there. I remember that interview like it was yesterday. I think it was 10 years ago, where, you really value the input of the young people you have. And you are secure enough to let your players teach you. There are many times we were running something offensively, and one of our guys would break it off and do something, which really wasn't in my script. And I got to the point where I was secure enough to say, do that again. What did you do there? Why did you do that? Well, you know what? We're going to do that. Well, now they really have ownership. Now make it work.
It's so good because one of the things you say, because there are a lot of young coaches that seek your counsel. And Becky and I have found that with assistant coaches, we have not been able to do collaborations very successfully within athletic departments because assistant coaches naturally are more convicted and there's less humility unknowingly because they haven't sat and, like you said, they haven't called a timeout, which makes me think a conversation you were having with some young coaches. And you said, they haven't been motherfucked yet and it's going to happen. And then I challenged you, when did it happen to you? And you told me a hilarious story. Can you share that?
Yeah, it's interesting. The heat of competition, the heat of battle, players are emotional and they may react to you, the leader, the authority figure. And they may, in front of 15,000, embarrass you a little bit. Now, you can either take it to another level and burn the whole house down, or you can diffuse it. And I had a young man by the name of Ben Hansborough, who was the Big East Player of the Year. And we're playing Kentucky in the Big East SEC Challenge in Louisville. And he was a fabulous competitor, fabulous player, but one of those wired competitors that basically he drove the train for us and we needed his energy. And sometimes it would get him maybe a little off the rails, but I never wanted to dampen it because I knew we needed him. And so he takes a bad shot early in the game. It goes in. He takes another bad shot. It goes in. He takes the third bad shot. It misses. Then he takes the fourth, all before the first media timeout, first 4 minutes of the game. There's a foul. There's a dead ball. And it's a quiet moment. One of our guys is shooting a free throw. And I said, Ben, come on over. And as he's coming over to me, I always made sure, like with the officials, I put my hands in my pockets so it would never gyrate at him. Or I was going like so low key. And I was going to suggest, I was not going to really coach. I was like, hey, Ben, maybe we just swing it a little bit more, the next couple possessions. And he turns to me in my face, puts his finger in my face and goes, F that, I'm rolling tonight. And I turn gently and I sit down on the bench and I turn to one of the assistants and I say, we maybe will address that at the next media timeout.
And I challenged you if you did, and you said he might not even remember that.
He did. I never brought it up again. He didn't remember it. I think we laughed about it after his senior year, and he had a great game. He actually listened to the coaching point, and we moved the ball a little bit, but it was a heated exchange. Actually, we had one in Madison Square Garden last Monday with one of our players and one of our young assistants. And our young assistant, I was like, uh-oh, how's he going to handle this? He can jack this up to a crazy level in the Garden at a clutch moment, or he can really diffuse that. And I give him a lot of credit. He said, hey, we're all good. Hang in there. And so I grabbed him after the game. I said, you handled that fabulously. And I said, you're going to be a head coach one day. Remember that incident right there, because there are going to be many. And a lot of times you just want to diffuse and get back to a little bit more level-headed before you make your point.
You're the master neutralizer. And I wanted you to tell the story about the night before senior day.
Yeah, you have team rules. Sometimes you can have too many team rules. So my team, hey, don't do this, don't do that. Now you got to enforce them. Coach Becky knows, now I got to enforce that one. And the team's all looking, and it's your best player. How the hell is he going to handle this one? So I had a very general rule, which gave me a lot of latitude. Don't do anything that would embarrass your family, yourself, or the University of Notre Dame. That's my training rule. And so that gave me a lot of generalization there. All right. And I had a young man who was really gifted. He was a senior captain, but a little bit erratic emotionally. And it's the night before senior night, and we had our team in a hotel, and we were going to do a meeting at 9:30. And we always did it at 9:30. Friday evening, we're going to play Saturday. We're going to get to the NCAA tournament. So we're in the midst of a good year. And I want these seniors to finish. Well, it's 9:40, and this young man has not shown up yet. So I'm not going in there until everybody's there. We all have now it's 9:50. No sign of him. So I go in the bar, I get a glass of wine, and his two other co-captains, I tell you, my assistants are shaking in their boots, like, oh, it's going to be a scene. The last thing we needed was a scene, right? And so I said, go get the other two captains. So they come in, they sit down, and they laugh about it now. They're both married, family, very successful business guys. And I said, hey, Rob, Colin, I'm thinking, I don't think we need to meet tonight. I think we just get rolling tomorrow and let's go win senior day. And thank God they were on the same. Yeah, coach, we don't need any meeting at all, because they understood the young man who wasn't there. They understood there was slippage at times, but yet they loved him. And that was not the time to blow the roof off the thing. And fortunately, we did win and had a good senior day. And I think, we laugh about it. But it was,
Have you ever blown the roof off?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I think there's time. So here's a great story. Notre Dame, when I coached at Notre Dame, we never won at Virginia. Saturday, with the new coach, Micah Shrewsbury, who's really a gifted young coach, they won at Virginia. So I texted the old SID, who's still working with the Notre Dame coach. I said, man, and I had forgotten about this incident. He said, man, that's great you got one in Charlottesville. We never could get one. He goes, do you remember what you did with the whiteboard? I go, uh-oh. I erased. I go, remind me again? He goes, oh, you came in at the end of one of them and you crushed it. And I was standing behind it and almost knocked me on the floor. I shoved the whiteboard. I didn't know he was behind it, made a scene. We're not tough enough. One of those, making a point. But then I walked out of the locker room and took a deep breath and said, you think they bought it? You were able to, get to those moments. But he goes, Coach, you almost gave me a concussion. The whiteboard bounced off my head. I go, darn, Alan, sorry about that. But yeah, I do remember that, my man.
How do you discern when to blow the roof off and when to just completely neutralize?
Yeah, and I think that's a real gut feel of when, you know what? I think sometimes your players tell you when they need it. I think they almost tell you when they need to be called on the carpet, so to speak, or challenged, or challenge their manhood, so to speak. One of the things I used to love, and it really worked at Notre Dame, is I wouldn't yell, but I would say, that's okay tonight, because you know what? You're the nice guys from Notre Dame, and you all have great grade point averages. Oh, you're going to be okay. You'll get a free pass because you're good guys. You go to Notre Dame, you go to Mass, and you have a 3.0. You'll be fine. Don't worry about it. Oh, that right there, they'd walk out wanting to fight each other, and they were ready the next day. So that was my go-to at times in that environment. But a lot of times you're coming in, you're hearing some of your captains challenging each other, challenging the room. So, hey, they open the door. I'm going to jump in there. Let me jump in. It's like they set the tone. Let me finish this off. Thank you. And I think reading the room, right, is such a key, and it's hard, but that's kind of really your job as a head coach, reading that room, reading that practice floor every day. I always loved when guys were stretching. Bumping. I touched everybody up every day. What's up? How we doing? How's school today? Hey, how's your sister doing? This be while they're stretching. Well, you talk. Is your dad coming tonight? Just personal stuff, touching everybody up. You gonna smile today? You kind of pissed off yesterday, and what do you think of my shirt? Does this shirt fit? Just stuff to break the ice, to get some communication, and on a daily basis.
Hey, as a head coach, you said that game days are the loneliest days. Why?
I don't know. It was just what the military saying, it's lonely on the point, right? And being the leader is lonely. You are the final say. You're the decision maker. Certainly, you take the input from your staff and everything, and then it's on you. And I just was the waiting for a 7:30 game, and then we played some 9 o'clock. We played some 9 o'clock games. That was just horrible. You're just wound up all day thinking about what you didn't do, what you could screw up, maybe second guessing. And I would just, it just was, you felt lonely, especially on the road. You know, you, when you're the head coach and you come into the team meal, the tone changes a little bit. When you leave, and so you kind of know you're the natural wet blanket sometimes. So so you stay away. So you stay away and you stay in your room, and like, I don't want to be down there, and everybody's looking over. How's he? Is he pissed? So you kind of stay in your room, and you can get to some lonely places. I remember those days, and I don't I don't miss those. And maybe if I went back as a head coach, I would change my psychology on game day.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you, because you're so good at neutralizing other people and disarming them and getting them back to neutral. But for yourself, it's a whole different ball game. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, one of the phrases they refer to coaches, well, he doesn't get ulcers, he gives them. Right. Right. There's many coaches that don't get ulcers, but they can give them to their staff and to their players. I was a get ulcers guy. I never wanted, I ingested. I never wanted, not that you didn't hold your staff accountable, but I never wanted a miserable tone around the practice facility. Like guys coming over like, oh man, I got 3 o'clock practice. I got to deal with this guy today. And my staff, oh shit, we're going to meet again till we're going to meet for 4 hours after the game. I didn't want that. And so I lived the other side of it. Probably affected my health at times, and high blood pressure, and maybe not sleeping the best. But I just felt, that was the tone I wanted to set. And but yet there's guys that get it done when they walk in the gym, everyone's afraid and uptight, that it was just a different way of doing it. It really wasn't my personality. And my biggest, you want to win, you got to win or you're going to get fired. We get all that. I always felt the pressure in the first team meeting. We would always do it on Labor Day. Labor Day first team meeting, September 4th. And I'd walk in and, have an agenda and go through some stuff. And I'd look at 12 to 14 guys, their eyes, and they're fresh and they're dreaming and it's a new season. And every one of them have such big dreams. And most likely 5 or 6 of them are unrealistic dreams. But yet I would look and go, that's pressure, man. I want them all to have a good experience. Darn it, I want them to have a good experience. And, when they graduate from here, they come back to a reunion and go, man, coach, that was, and again, I was certainly not undefeated on that front. But when you have a number of your players come back and say, man, coach, I really appreciate you. You made a man out of me, or a parent comes back. Ben Hansborough's father wrote me a letter the day of our banquet. I still have it. It's unbelievably touching about growing his son as a man. And, and that's the educator in us, that where you go, that's really what it was all about. And so, that was a little bit the stance, the vibe I tried to set.
Well, I have the last thing I want to say before I transition into one more video that we'll end with is that there's, the coaches that will text you at 2 a.m. and say, am I a good coach? When they're legends. Of course you're a good coach. How does that happen?
No, there is an insecurity, and I know you get a lot of these texts, and I appreciate what all you do, and I've been there. I think I would reach out maybe to my son because he was a high school coach, or reach out to Morgan Wooten, who was.
Hey, can Dad still do this?
yeah. Like, what do you think, Kyle? And he was always great at keeping me loose, but no, you doubt, you get insecure. Now, you can't do it in front of your group, your staff. And there are days where you have to totally fake it. Inside, you may be doubting, you may be struggling, you may be hurting, you may have the flu. But when you're up in front of your group for those key times, you better be on. Now, you can walk outside in the bathroom and pass out right after practice, or go right to that Ruth Chris where I saw Coach and start drinking heavily. But you better be on and right. And like I say, there are days you have to totally fake it, man. And then,
I want to ask you about that, though, because anybody that knows you will say how authentic you are. And then to have to put on that performer self version of you. How did you deal with that inner tension?
Yeah, I think that's exhausting, right? Let's say you've lost 3 in a row and you're trying to be positive in the practice before the next game. and you are. And you're digging deep to do it. And I can think back to sometimes players and staff looking over like, does he know we just lost 3 in a row? And like, and we got 2 guys hurt. Is he okay? But it was my only way of, we got to try and just, get some positive vibes. I used the word a lot, karma. I was a big believer in karma, trying to see if we could get some good karma going. But you do, you have your quiet moments then where you're doubting. And that's why you have to have a good support system. I was fortunate with a family, some mentors like Morgan Wooten, who I could call and really bounce things off of.
Well, I want to show you this because this is textbook from my perspective on how to go out. Take a listen to his stepping down press conference.
What led you to know that now is the right time to not only step away, but announce you're stepping away? I think it can be a distraction, speculation, and what's going on? Is he coming back? Do they want him to come? I just want our guys to try and focus and play. And my thought was, why don't we give some clarification to this thing right now and see if it helps our group and quite frankly, help Notre Dame, that they can get into the process of getting a little bit of advance notice on the search. I'm fully available, and Jack and I have talked about helping get the next person. I think that's a big responsibility for me to help hire the next right coach here.
You had talked as recently as October that maybe you wanted to go past 24, 25. What did you see, what did you sense in the weeks and the games that followed that kind of led you to believe, I don't know if it's going to last past this season?
Yeah. I think it's a cumulative effect when you look back to, here's when you guys probably have the stats. From 2000 to 2017, we went to 12 NCAA tournaments. Am I right on that? I think 12. And since 2018, we've been to one. And that's how you measure, man. And I felt we lost momentum. It was awesome to get us back last year, and that was an amazing experience to go and win 2 games in the NCAA tournament. And so as I looked at the big picture and looked moving forward, I just thought, I just think a new voice is needed. And so as I thought about it a lot over Christmas, I just felt, that there just needs to be, it's time for a new person. And again, I'm kind of excited about my next chapter. I have no idea what the hell it's going to be, but I'm excited about that, and relocating probably somewhere else. And 23 South Bend winters probably been enough.
23 South Bend winners and 1 Ruth Chris. That was your line, man. But when you think about that whole thing, what allowed so many of your colleagues are so afraid of walking out that door into the unknown? What allowed you to be excited about it?
I think 23 years at a place is a long time. We had not been as successful the last 5. And I just felt, and I've watched coaches leave places in flames, right? And I'll never forget this. We played in the NIT in, I think, 2008. And C.M. Newton, the former coach and athletic director at Kentucky, was the chair of the NIT committee, and he spoke. And he said, one thing I'm really proud of, I've never been fired. And for a coach to be able to say that, he coached for a long time before. And I thought to myself, think to myself, man, I want to get to a Final Four. Man, I want to win a national. You know what? I just don't want to get fired. Can I handle this strategically enough to not, and so I always thought, like, what's your escape plan? How do you do it? Everyone wants to do it like Al McGuire, win the national championship and drop the mic. That only happened to freaking Al McGuire. That only happened to him. And so my feeling was, in January was, let's put some clarification. Now, the one thing, and you've seen it a little bit lately, and I have a problem with it with some of the recent college retirements, leaving during the season and leaving your team. When I did that, it was January 25th, and we weren't very good, and we weren't going to be very good. And my AD said to me in the meeting, he said, well, we'll go interim. I said, no. I'm going to finish with these guys. Like, we all signed up for this, and it ain't going to be easy. Like, we're taking our punches, but I'm going to hang with them, and I'm going to finish the job. And I'm glad I did, because, I've seen some guys leave during the season, and then their teams are in a tailspin. Boy, that would really bother me, that you weren't there trying to help in a tough situation. So, I was also, and you could tell when I started to talk about my next chapter, I was also excited, like, I need to do something else. And I didn't know the Atlanta Hawk thing was going to present itself with Quinn Snyder, who I coached at Duke in 1988. And it's been really kind of a new, exciting challenge being around the NBA. But
ironically, you know what's crazy? And just comment on this. When he left the Jazz, because they were at the top. Yeah. And one of the things he said was that it's time for the team. They need a new voice. And that's exactly what you said.
No, and Calipari said the same thing, like the new voice. When I went into my AD, I said, it's just time for a new voice. He was all worried I was going to be emotional. Like, hey, check. I've had 23 years at one place. I have been honored to be the coach at the University of Notre Dame. let's get a young buck in here. I'll help you. Tell me who you want me to recruit for you, which I did talk to Micah Shrewsbury the night before he made the decision, and I sold the hell out of the program and why he should take it. And because you want to go back, how many guys, I always look, how many guys are bitter and they don't go back to where they should go back. And I was here for when they played Georgia Tech in football in Atlanta and saw everybody, and I'll get back for a football weekend next year. So just ending it the right way, even though in that, like, hey, I accept responsibility. We haven't been as good as we needed to be, and it's time, and I'm okay. The beginning of the press conference, I don't know if it's probably not recorded. They did it in the football media room. Well, I'm never in the football media room because there was so much media that came. So I walk in and everyone's like they're at a funeral. And I walk in, I sit down and I say, oh, so it took me to step down to get the football press conference room. And that's how we started. And the whole place was like, all right, Mike's fine. Let's go.
That's you.
I got to retire to get into the stadium to do my media. Damn, man, I've been here 23 years. What about when we won the ACC? Anyways, so
it's
thoughts.
So real what you're saying. And when a lot of coaches step away, they're surprised by how many opportunities actually come their way. And I think that if they realize that on the front side, they would never stay at a place too long. Can you speak to that?
No, that's a great point. I don't 23 years at a place, there's not many guys. Tom Izzo's been there forever. Mark Few, there's just a handful. I don't know in this climate if you can really stay a long time like the old days, but to at least read the room and have a feel for the game of when it's maybe time to reinvent. Kevin O'Neill, who was the coach at Marquette in Tennessee, his phrase always was 5 and dive. 5 and dive, 5 and dive. Well, I did 5 and dive at Delaware, but there are many guys in our profession, in the basketball profession, college, who've done that and have really had great longevity, and they've stayed. I always say coaching is staying ahead of the posse, right? They're always back there. You get an NCAA tournament bid, you get a little distance. You go to the NIT, they're back up on you again. And the 5 and dive thing is guys stayed ahead of the posse. If you're at 23 years, I actually found myself my last 5 years, which was another sign. I would go into a press conference and write, how you set the tone, how you shape it. It's all part of the game. And I would think it through. Maybe we lost 2 in a row. Here's how I'm going to come at it. And I think to myself, oh, I used that one. I used that one. I've used that one too much because the media covered me was around for 23. I go, I don't have anything left. I've used it all. I need to go somewhere else where this stuff's fresh.
Think about your biggest takeaway. Our classes was, as a head coach, you are the wet blanket. The visual that comes with the room quieting when you walk in and rising when you walk out can be a tough transition for people, especially when you value relationships. As always, we want to leave you with a few questions to think about. These questions, as well as a link to download the listening guide, can be found in the description of the episode. Feel free to pause after each one to give yourself time to think about your answers. Question 1. When have you blown the roof off with your team and it was effective? When have you and it wasn't? What's the lesson with each of those answers? Question 2. Why do you think Mike said game days are lonely for head coaches? How do you personally relate to that? Question 3. There's a coaching line. He doesn't get ulcers, he gives them. Which would your team say you were? Question 4. What % of the time are you performing versus being authentic inside of your job? Question 5. How does Mike's retirement speech compare to others that you've heard? What can you take from that? Thanks again for listening. And for more information on What Drives Winning, the books, the coaching lab, and the courses Brett and I teach, visit whatdriveswinning.com. See you next time.